and welcome to the 5th episode of our Spark Social Justice online series. We are delighted to welcome today Bronagh Daly, CAFOD's volunteer manager, and Matty Maslen, who is going to tell us about young people and young adults who can make a positive difference through volunteering. Matty is a young CAFOD volunteer who's going to tell us about his own experiences. Hello, both of you. Welcome.
Hiya.
Thanks, Tom.
So thank you so much for joining us. I'm really interested to know more about volunteering because quite often young people like me want to start volunteering but don't really know how to get started. So Bronagh, could you first give us kind of an overview of what CAFOD's volunteering programme is like and why volunteers are so important?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I just wanted, before I start talking about it, I just want to say thank you for inviting me to talk about this. It's something I'm really passionate about. And I've volunteered for many years for lots of different organisations. And volunteering is such an important part of building CV and building networks, and has helped me to get some of the jobs that I've had through the volunteering time that I've spent. So the volunteers at CAFOD, the volunteers and the supporters and the helpers are core to the work of CAFOD, whether it's our gap year volunteers or if they've been visiting projects overseas, or even when they come in and share updates of their trips when they've been to schools visiting here in the UK. That's a really massive part of our work, engaging with young people, engaging with schools. And especially when our young people go and speak in parishes, it really breathes a lot of new life back into some of the work that we do in a community setting. And as well as that, in nearly every parish in the diocese, we have CAFOD groups. And generally that's people within the parish who would like to put their faith into practice and who care about human rights and social justice. And they can speak at Mass, speak after Mass, they can do coffee mornings, things like that. And that could be on topics that include poverty, so global poverty, climate change, human rights, sustainable and renewable energy. It could be on topics such as living simply or fair trade. And there's a lot of campaigning and a lot of prayer action, spiritual work, but as well as that, there's practical things like fundraising as well and collections after Mass. And we also have a big programme of school volunteering. We have a national programme of school volunteering. So here in the diocese, we have young people, we have students, we have retired teachers, a whole range of people who volunteer their time. So that could be one day a week or one day a month. And they go into schools visiting Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. And also they go into secondary schools. And the type of programme that those volunteers do is they deliver assemblies and workshops. And that could be on things like refugee work that we do within CAFOD, the support that we have for refugees. It could be around water and sanitation. And it's also on projects that we have looking at the rights of the child. So we work with children, our volunteers work with children and support them to learn a lot more about human rights and the rights of the child around the world. And there's also, it's quite a lot when we think about it, but we have a big programme of campaign volunteers, and that's a really crucial part of our work. Our campaign volunteers, they work all across the Diocese of Leeds and every diocese in England and Wales, and they campaign and help us to lobby our MPs. So that could be writing an email or writing a handwritten letter or actually meeting them face to face. And I help that as well. I help our volunteers to do that. And that really makes a massive change. It puts a lot of pressure on the government to make governmental, long-term sustainable governmental change. So it's kind of a really quick snapshot. We have office volunteers as well. That's how I met Matty. He volunteered his time helping out in our CAFOD office that's based in Headingley. And we have people that help on the computers. We help people with paperwork. We have people who volunteer just for a couple of months. They come and do some of our social media. We have volunteers who've been with us for years who help on the database. So basically what I'm saying is I'm one local worker, I work part-time, but our volunteering program is really the lifeblood of everything that CAFOD does. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So can anyone become a volunteer, and what kind of skills do you think you're looking for volunteers?
Yeah, absolutely anybody can be a volunteer. And I think it's just trying to break down some of our perceptions and maybe misconceptions about what volunteering is. We have people who volunteer for just a few moments, people who click on an email link and send it off to their MP. And that is a huge act that makes a really big difference, even though it's only for a few moments. And then we have people who volunteer for a few days a week or a few weekends. They might do a Lenten talk or a harvest talk at Mass, and then we don't hear from them again. And we have some people who we're in touch with every week, that they go in to visit schools. And I know that schools are during shutdown at the minute, but some of our school volunteers are keeping an eye on what's happening on social media, and they're involved in Zoom chats like this one. So we have people who have all types of different skills, and it can be any age group. If you're younger than 18, you need to have the permission of your grown-ups. And we have volunteers who help, as I said, both in the office and in the community. So we're doing a lot of work online at the minute. So the skills you mentioned about what skills would people need. So the office volunteer roles, they include online and offline communications, events, managing events, helping out with admin. And, you know, we get a lot of donations in, we get a lot of letters, and we hear a lot of updates from some of the children in schools, what they've been doing. So just trying to promote that in press releases. And we also have a lot of interest in our online content. So we have some people who help to write copy for us. And we have volunteering days. You just need to have a passion to work in an area where you help to change the systems and structures that cause poverty. That's kind of, it's not so much a skill really, it's something that you have that you really want to make a change. Or some people come to us from a faith perspective, that they want to put their faith into practice, which is great. So we have a lot of prayer activities, we have resources, we have reflections, and we have away days, things like that volunteers help us to organise. And when I think back to when I first started in CAFOD about 7 years ago, I started as a volunteer, and I got involved with my local CAFOD group, and I used to help to run the CAFOD children's liturgy at Mass, so the children and families would come to learn about scripture. And I learned a lot about the liturgical year. I learned about how a lot about the gospel stories and how to make that make sense to a 5 and a 6 and a 7-year-old. And it really helped me, actually. I went on a bit of a faith journey through that. So what I'm saying is we can do really practical things to help break down some of the big issues like climate change and global injustice to different age groups. Curiosity is really important, and wanting to care, and that's a really key skill, I suppose. And we have such a wide range of age groups who volunteer with us on so many different topics. The biggest draw, I would say, at the minute, Tom, is climate change. We have so many young people, so many grandparents, grandchildren, young people, families, parents, with loads of people who are passionate about climate change. And I suppose following on from what Pope Francis says about Laudato Si, that we all are called to make that ecological conversion, to really think about integral ecology. We have lots of people who really love our projects around Live Simply. So some people don't see it as volunteering, they see it as just living out a more simpler way of life, getting involved in our campaigns, but we call it volunteering, but some people just see it as part of their everyday response, really responding to the cry of the planet, and responding to the cry of the poor goes hand in hand. And we have so many people that want to do something practical to protect our common home. So there's lots of skills. Anybody can volunteer with CAFOD, and any skills are always needed. So we just have an open door to everyone who wants to get involved, especially young people, because it just breathes so much new life into our work.
Perfect, thank you. Matty, I'll come to you next. So you're a CAFOD volunteer. How did you find out about the opportunity, and what kind of things drew you to it, and what have you done since being a volunteer?
So yeah, like Brenna said, I'm an office volunteer, which means that if it wasn't during lockdown, I'd be doing mainly like admin stuff and adding to the databases what other volunteers are doing in schools and in parishes and stuff. But during lockdown, instead I've been mainly writing up good news stories, which are like stories of hope from around our diocese and the work that people are doing for CAFOD, which is sometimes it's fundraising, sometimes it is people doing talks and stuff and different meetings that are going on and stuff like that. And it's just stories of generosity and hope from around diocese during a time when I think people really need that. So I joined CAFOD last year because I was already volunteering with the diocese, and I'd taken a day off to go to one of the schools' Strike for Climates, and like Verona said, someone mentioned to me, they were like, oh, you know, CAFOD do a lot of work with against climate change. Why didn't you just nip around and talk to Verona, because the office was like 5 minutes away from the office that I was already working in. And I was like, oh, okay. And I thought it'd be like a 5-minute chat, but Verona's just so friendly. And I ended up there for about 3 hours. And then I was like, oh, I'll just come back. Like, I'll just go and help out, because it was just really nice. It was like an atmosphere where you wanted to help out, and it was very, like Verona said about like anyone being welcome, and you really feel that when you go there. And what I really liked about starting with CAFOD is that like the first thing that I did on my first day is a course called Understanding CAFOD, and it's like a PowerPoint when there's like videos on it and stuff, and it's about like the different work that CAFOD does and how different types of volunteering like fit in and how you make a difference and stuff. And then at the end there's like a quiz, which sort of sounds intimidating if I say like, oh, you get a test on your first day, but it's not. It's like just to make sure that you understand what work you're doing and how you fit into the framework of like making a change and making a difference. And I think that's actually a really helpful thing that CAFOD do, because, you know, when I went home that day and people were like, oh, so what did you do? Like, how are you even helping if you sat in an office, like you're not really doing anything, are you? You're not like going out there and making a difference. But that course like really makes a difference to how you see the work that you're doing. And I think that CAFOD is really good at doing that, at making sure that everything you're doing, you're really aware of how you're making like a bigger impact than maybe what you see on the surface of each of the small actions. Yeah.
Thank you. So Bronagh, you've brought along some slides to show us as well. So can you talk us through those and let us know how we can get involved?
Yeah, so I'll just get this slide up and show it to you. Just take a second. So this first slide is an intergenerational climate change workshop. So if you see the little boy in the middle with a red jumper, there's a man to the left of him. Oh, just go back a bit. These people have been involved in climate change action, and we invited our local MP, Alex Sobel, along, he's in the picture, and teenagers, grandparents, parents, teachers. We had a really, really big group of people that came along, and these were people who were curious about how does this fit into our church structure? How does it fit into our primary schools? How does it fit into our own lives when we go home? And it was put together with the CAFOD group, who have recently been awarded with the Live Simply Award. So they've been able to show how they have campaigned, and they have grown their own veg, and they've got renewable energy, and they've got a plastic policy. So all of these tiny little actions that all of these family members have had have made a really big change. And we put it back to Alex Sobel, the MP who was there, to say, will you mention Live Simply when you go back to Parliament? Will you make sure that you mention renewable energies? Will you make sure that we look at lowering emissions to sustainable levels, to try and achieve net zero? So some of the children that were here were 6, 7, 8 and 9 and 10-year-old. They don't have a voice in terms of voting, but they do have a voice when they can speak directly to their MP. And one of the children in the picture, she sat down below the little boy with the red jumper. Her name is Lois, and she was campaigning to become the young mayor of Leeds City Council. So she had a whole project all about plastic waste. Her whole campaigning kind of year was all about less plastic. And all of that fits into the parish group. But it's so important to encourage young people, especially students who come from the local schools, to really keep that discussion going about climate change and about living simply. And that event had a we talked very little about faith, but Pope Francis, the children kept mentioning, but Pope Francis says, and talking about Laudato Si, the encyclical that Pope Francis sent to every human on the planet, for everybody to really respond to the cry of the poor and the cry of the planet. And the reason we work in an intergenerational model really is that every age group inspires every other age group. It wouldn't be good if we just spoke to the primary school children and then spoke separately to the secondary school kids. It's really good to have everybody in the room together at the one time. And we ran massively over. And it is similar when we do work with some of our parish volunteers as well. We end up talking a lot about the projects that we can help, the projects that we can support, whether it's fundraising, campaigning, or if it is a prayer activity or if it's a reflection. We are always looking to ask some of our volunteers who might be retired teachers, let's say, for example, we always ask, are there any teenagers in your household? Are there any young families? And all of these volunteers have included, so Anne, who's to the right of your screen, the lady with the glasses who's sat down below me, she does this really good project of Smarties. They have these Smartie tubes at the back of church, and all the young families take them away and they have to fill them up with £1 coins. And she's realised that every Smartie tube, I think you can fill it up with maybe 20, 25 pounds. And that's a way of getting young families to help out with CAFOD, so a little bit of fundraising, plus they get a sweet treat. And that was such a really good tip. So I've told Anne's tip to pretty much every parish group that I support and help with. And it goes to help during the coronavirus pandemic. We're able to send a lot of food parcels and an awful lot of support to families who really, really need help in refugee camps. And you can see families that really, really need that help, especially in a lot of our more rural communities where we would be doing livelihood projects, all about growing vegetables, sustainable seeds. seeds that are indigenous to the community. We've had to repurpose some of our grants to look at food aid, safe water supplies, and all of that prayer and all of that campaigning and all of that fundraising in parish life really goes to help some of the projects that we've got really strong links with, who need a lot more help during the coronavirus pandemic, who may not have health systems that are as robust as here in the UK. And our young people are a massive part of that. So as I mentioned before, I started helping out. This is a scene very similar to what I did when I was younger. Well, I'm going to say younger, 7 years ago. We invite speakers. So this is the Bolivian project manager for CAFOD. She came and talked to us about her work in Bolivia. And she also explained to us a project called Hands On in Colombia. And that's working directly. You'll see some of these photographs that the children are holding up. Each one of these photographs are of a young person in Colombia that we're working with to turn away from violence and turn away from gangs. And that's a really big topic for some of our young people here in the UK. How do we walk towards peace rather than walking towards gangs and violence and corruption, really? So it was brilliant to invite people like Nikki to come and speak in parishes. And our young children are involved, but they're supporting teenagers on a project called Colombia. And this is one of the project leaders that we got to hear about, who works directly with teenagers to build programs of peace. And it really resonates with our young people here in the UK. And then we have more, these are Year 7 and Year 8 children who work on the World Gifts programme. So you can see down in the picture, there's a Smarties tube. So this is passing on ideas that worked in Upper Mill over near the Lancashire border. And this is now children in Selby who are doing it as well. They've got their Smarties tube. And they raise money for the World Gifts programme. So this helps bees and seeds and sustainable projects to buy an actual gift for a community that really need a little bit of support. So it's a direct response from our young people in our schools in Selby who are helping projects overseas. And then if we think about climate change as well, we had a local school teacher who invited this gentleman on the far right who's holding the cube, is our Democratic Republic of Congo project worker, and he came to speak to a parish group about how climate change is impacting people who live in the Congo. And so that was an amazing petition. You can see that Helen on the very left, she's holding a big petition. So the parish priest, myself, a CAFOD worker, the children's liturgist there, Helen, she worked with a lot of young people. We had 15 teenagers who held the petition that she's got and stopped everybody on the way out of Mass. And we got so many signatures. I think we got up to about 1,000 signatures in that week from all the different Masses. And that was, what, 15 minutes at the end of Mass? But that helped put so much pressure on the government to really look at net zero, to make sure that we don't put the same amount of emissions out that we save through sustainable means. And it really helped young people put their voice towards a campaign. And also our worker from the Democratic Republic of Congo, he was able to tell young people about our work with the Ebola crisis. So it's bringing some real live project work into our parishes. This next slide, Matty, you might remember this. You and Luke helped to welcome our new chief executive, and we did a thing called a Lenten look back. We invited lots of volunteers to look at all the materials we've used over the last 30 and 40 years at CAFOD. I don't know if you remember that event, Matty. I was really stressed out meeting our brand new director, and you and Luke just seemed to think it was a real breeze. You helped so much on social media. We got the biggest amount of people liking our photographs because you're so much better at social media. Well, Luke was so much better at social media than me. And it's so important to have a real mix of age groups who are helping out with our work. This photograph is a group of volunteers who've been involved for years and years, but they're starting to pass over some of the CAFOD group work in parishes to some of the more younger people in our parishes, and they held a really big fair trade chocolate tasting day. And the young lady with the red hair, she wrote up some lovely press releases to really promote it. So lots of engagement on loads of different things, and I was absolutely gutted that I missed their chocolate tasting event. I was at another mass that day. In my job, I get to go to a lot of masses, which I wouldn't have done in the past. In this next slide, I'll show you, this was a brilliant day that I was invited to. It was a parish who had just won their Live Simply award, and there was a lot of teenagers who helped out at that. And it was just a really good day to celebrate all that they had done for their Live Simply award. And this shows you a collection of all the different activities. There was planting in gardens, planting of seeds. We had a celebrity that came along who helped with that. Somebody from the country file, Helen Skelton, came along to provide the award to the children. The school got involved. There was walk to masses. There was Live Simply picnics, a Live Simply garden. It's quite hard to see in this, some of the pictures, but they helped to fund a bees project. They had a cycle rack fitted at their church to encourage people to lock up their bikes when they come to mass. So many things. They wrote up a massive list of all the things they did, all the teenagers and all the school children and all the families, and they were awarded the Live Simply award from CAFOD. And it's great to have young people involved in that. It's not just about fundraising. Sometimes it's just about doing those tiny little practical steps to help make a massive change. And it helps to encourage us to live in solidarity with families like this family in Bolivia, who sometimes struggle to get a good crop. So as we're growing our potatoes, we think about families in Bolivia, families in El Salvador who we're thinking about through these projects. And then I also am chuffed that I got to work with Madeleine here, who's on the right-hand side. She had an amazing trip, a gap year trip through CAFOD to go to Uganda. And she worked with the Justice and Peace group, and she visited so many projects in to look at human rights around mining and human rights around land ownership. And she came back, and into her other part of her gap year project was at Leeds Trinity University, and working with the staff and all the students there to help them to show a thumbs up for climate change. So how to be active, and how to lobby MPs, and how to get really, really involved. So I worked really closely with Madeleine. She went into a lot of schools to speak to a lot of students about how they can do little practical steps to help support CAFOD with climate change lobbying. Another slide shows Sophie, another one of our gap year volunteers. You'll see the map on the screen. She's looking at El Salvador, and she's asking advice before she goes on her trip to two of our other office volunteers and the Justice and Peace worker who had worked with an El Salvador project in Puentecitos, supporting families on a livelihoods project. So it's again sharing all of that knowledge of people who've been involved in campaigning on poverty and climate change for years and years and years. And Sophie learned a lot from them about their visit. The photographs they're looking at actually were some of the families from Puentecitos who came to visit us to show us about how to live simply. And so that relationship is back and forward. And then when Sophie actually went to Puentecitos and met some of the families, she was able to mention families from Leeds who had met them. So it keeps that whole conversation going. And this is Sophie. The heart that she's holding is messages of hope and solidarity. And some of the questions were like, what football team do you support? But a lot of the messages were, you know, we stand with you, we pray for you, we hope you're well, and what's the weather like in Puentecitos? So she brought all these questions and messages from children on those hearts. And then she showed them to the children in Puentecitos, and then they replied back, and Sophie went back in to visit schools in Leeds. And it's so important that young people take this opportunity, do some of our Step Into the Gap programs, to really think about what can I do to make a better world, to answer the cry of the poor and to answer the cry of the earth. And one of the best days out that I think I ever had, when we took hundreds of young people down to London. Madeleine, our young volunteer, helped to make this banner with a parish group. These are all the thumbs that you saw earlier. All of these messages were questions and intentions to ask the MPs when we lobbied them down in London. There were thousands and thousands of young people at Parliament. We took lots of buses down and trains down to challenge government to do a lot more about climate change, about net zero. And we got involved with the Climate Coalition's project, The Time Is Now. And all these young people were holding their alarm clocks, and it made the most huge noise. And all the MPs came out and they had to come and meet with us on the green. It was an amazing time to see so many young people joining in with parishioners and school teachers and leaders within our community to say that the time is now, and really challenge government to make a massive change, especially around carbon emissions. And Madeleine also helped me to visit some of our parishes to say thank you for their soup lunches and for their bacon buddy days. And she spoke at a lot of churches like this one in Bingley to say thank you to all of those communities who'd raised money through soup lunches, because it helps to support projects like this in Uganda to make sure this big water tank over at the left-hand side is a renewable water source, which means that people like Svondo here doesn't have to walk 3 miles every morning just to get water, to water his community vegetable patch. So the large water tank on the left-hand side of your screen, that's been part funded by collections through parish. And it's so important because Madeleine has been to Uganda. She can talk personally about, she has met Svondo and the people that work with him to get safe water supplies. So when she goes in to talk in school, she can say, I've met these people. I know that I've stood underneath that water butt. And really brings our projects to life. And we also thank some of our volunteers who have met with clergy. This is our Bishop of Leeds to present the Lampedusa Cross, which represents our work with refugees. So this cross was made from the wreckage of a boat, a refugee boat that crashed on the island of Lampedusa in close to Italy. And it's really to help young people to make sure that we know that we're always keeping the thoughts of anyone who's trying to seek a better life, to say that we stand with you. So we do a lot of campaigns around the rights of refugees and the support and our work around supporting refugees. As you can see, it's really tough if your boat was wrecked off a coast, and sadly a lot of people have lost their lives. So the Lampedusa Cross represents our work, inspiring young people to do more to protect the human rights of refugees and those seeking asylum. And then I'll come back to this photograph again, just to say that our work in CAFOD is to encourage absolutely everybody to have a go, whether it's just sending an email or whether it's getting really involved in a big campaign like The Time Is Now or Live Simply or any type of volunteering. Everybody is welcome. We love the massive range of people from all different walks of life who support our work. And we do some really formal training. This is a lot of our school volunteers all training. And some of our volunteers, our school volunteers, are retiring or retirement age, and we really want young people to get involved. So this is a project that I did with St Mary's Menston, working with the head boy and the head girl. They had presented me with a huge check of fundraising that they had done. But I also asked them to get involved, to really get involved as campaigners, to get involved with putting their faith into action, encouraging people to get involved that may not, to set up a CAFOD group, to get involved in lobbying. And I think, Tom, you'll recognise the people in this photograph. This is from the school that you're very much part of. And to start up eco warriors, eco brigades. So all of this will sound very familiar to you, Tom. But to have that legacy, it's not just about fundraising is amazing because we are a charity, but the campaigning and really putting that message into life that we all can do tiny little things. We can make a tiny little change, but when we add up all of those tiny little changes, it's massive. It's absolutely massive. It makes such a big impact on the lives of those people who are really struggling with poverty and really feeling the massive effect of climate change. And this picture is one of my favorite. It's with a whole group of people in an allotment that they built at the back of their church. It's over at St Benedict's in Garforth. And they have, this allotment runs at the back of the school. So it's the school, the allotment and the church. And the children are in here all the time, learning about how to care for our planet, how to grow food. And this is a lot of the grandparents and teachers and staff that would have been involved. And I met them and I really, really missed it. I'm in there somewhere giving somebody a really big hug. This is what I really, really miss, being in face-to-face contact. And for the time being, this is what our life kind of looks like. This is our CAFOD core team meeting. And Matty, there's a picture of you there. And I'm so delighted that you joined that meeting, because we do need young people to come and be part of our core team. We really, really need lots more young people to say, do you know what, I'll volunteer twice a year for 1 hour. That's all we need for our core team, for the voice of young people to say, I'm going to get involved. I'd like to really be part of this. So I'll leave this final slide just to really reflect on it, because we all know we need young people to be much more represented on our core team. And big round of applause to Matty for being in that meeting. It was brilliant. The comments afterwards were saying, Bronagh, you need to get more people on our core team meeting, and it needs to be more diverse. We need to have a really diverse core team in CAFOD. So if anybody's watching, please get in touch, and there'll be details after this, but we would absolutely love some more young people to be represented on our core team. And I'll stop sharing my slide now, if that's okay, Tom.
Yes, thank you so much.
Or is there any slides that you want me to go back to or talk about?
No, there's only one thing that I wanted to mention, and that was I remember meeting Madeline and Luke when we invited them into school. Yeah, and I just remember saying like how passionate they were about their cause. I remember Madeline delivering that assembly. It was just before she went to Uganda, actually. And yeah, she was so passionate and so kind of involved and so like she really wanted to know everyone's opinion and everyone's kind of everyone's cause. So yeah, that was really, really interesting. Thank you. I just have one final question, and it's to Matty. So obviously lots of young people are wanting to get involved with this. Do you have any like advice to young people or who are thinking of becoming volunteers?
I think I'd just say that if you've got time and skills to offer, if you reach out, then people are there waiting for your help. Like there's always someone who needs your help, and if you reach out and offer it, someone will take you up on it.
Thank you. I think that brings us to the end of this episode, unfortunately. Thank you so much for joining us, Matty and Bronagh, and everyone watching. I certainly feel really inspired, and next week we've got a really exciting episode because we're inviting Anna on to talk about the relationship between young people and the church today. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll hope to see you next time.
Thank you very much, Tom. See you, Matty.